Hey everyone, Stegar here and welcome back to Hunterville. In this video I just wanted to do a bit of a tour of the city since we've now reached episode 20 and I kind of want to split this series into 20 episode chunks where we can reflect on the progress, and since we've reached that time I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to reflect on everything we've done to this point. I'll probably mainly focus on things that we did from episode 15 onwards, since before that I was doing live plays in the city and there's various bits in various videos that kind of reflect on other things, but I do also want to cover a lot of things in this video and just give you a general tour of the city, as well as maybe if you haven't followed the series for that long, this might be a bit of a sort of catch up rather than watching say 5+ hours of all the episodes that are on my channel. And yeah, if you've been following along for the series for a while, this is just a nice refresher I guess for what we have going on. So kind of the first 5 episodes or so were mainly focused on the downtown. Down here, as you can see, there's a mixture of different building styles, as well as back then I didn't really know what I was doing and put this vanilla building in here. I don't really like it that much now, but I mean it's still passable. I'll probably change that in the future with something else. But you got some pretty nice looking buildings like this one that's kind of in the center of the screen now. I actually really like this building, but unfortunately it has a really bad LOD, so basically when I'm taking cinematics and things of the skyline I have to change my settings a lot to compensate for that, so that the LODs don't show. You've also got the first Skylines bank building in the center of the city. That is potentially the tallest point in the skyline. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it's contending well against this other building with the pointy bit. Then just, a few other buildings as you come around. This area hasn't really been worked on much, but I do plan on extending the downtown pretty much out to the riverbanks and things in the future, also including the Auckland Sky Tower assets somewhere around this area, as I wanted to include this in the series from day one, as it's kind of the main way that I can sort of pay some sort of respects to real life New Zealand is by using that building. If we come over here, there's just a few apartment buildings and things, along with some older buildings along this main road. And continuing down, very much similar things, getting more into the industrial areas of the city here, with a whole lot of warehouses and this Mitre 10 building. I think in a different save that I at some point forked off from my main save game, I did something to make this orange as with the Mitre 10 in New Zealand, because the Mitre 10 in New Zealand is orange, whereas the one in Australia is this sort of blue colour. And ironically we have a Pak'nSave truck driving out of this building, which makes no sense in this context, but anyway, I find that quite funny. If we go back to the downtown as well, there are 3 construction sites I think. This one here was mainly done with procedural objects, as I think I used that to resize the things or something. I think I resized something anyway in this to make it all work out, as well as you've got a crane and a few props around it. I mean, my builds, they weren't the best, as so you could say, compared to things now, but I still think I pulled off a really good job in the downtown in general. I mean, you've got planters out the front of this building. I unsubscribed from surface painters, so throughout this tour you'll just see bits of grass and ground where there should be perhaps concrete or gravel or something. Yeah, I'm just slowly going around and changing that, as I don't really see much of a point to, except in cinematics really, to fix that up. But you've also got a whole lot of things going on behind these buildings with mainly parking lots and entrances to underground parking. This is simply just a road that I've dragged down underground. There's nothing really down there, but for some reason the traffic AI wants to route people down there and then they just do U-turns and drive back out, which, while it might seem kind of dumb from how the game's handling that, it makes it honestly just look a little bit more realistic with having vehicles coming out of that parking lot. And then here's our second construction site. I think this was actually the first one that I built in the city, but it's the second one I'm showing you here today. I did put some scaffolding up the side of it so that people can walk up, and you've got all the street here is blocked off for this crane and everything else that's going on. And I think there's even like a few crack marks and things on the road where heavy machinery might have driven over it and kind of destroyed the road surface a little bit. And heading over this way, we've got the third construction site, sticking to the theme of construction sites. This is by far the largest construction site in the city. This stuff's all going to disappear into blueness because I have some clipping networks under here, but you can see how big it is in comparison to basically the whole city. It stands out quite a bit. But yeah, going back down here, you've got this however many story building it's going to be. I imagine that this is a hotel, and that will be directly connected to this thing here, which is meant to be some sort of convention center or arena or something. There's all these little lift shafts and things here too, where the lifts will eventually fit in time, as well as all the columns and concrete slabs and things around it. I think in this area you've also got like a few construction vehicles, and just some other like decals or something making it look dirt when there's actually gravel, like ploppable gravel I've used here as the surface for this, as well as a ramp leading into what would be a underground parking lot, but yeah, that currently goes nowhere and never will, since it doesn't really function at all. Also off camera, I think it was when I was recording the last episode, I added in this sort of meandering river all through the city, as I feel like it did just give me something more to work with in the future as I expand the city. I also added another one along here on this side, but yeah, I think that's basically it for the general downtown area. And then we have the central train station of the city that I built in episode 1. To be honest, I'm kind of on the fence about this station, whether to keep it or whether to replace it with something else. I've also been considering taking this track on the left-hand side and perhaps making that go into the third lot of platforms where this metro track currently goes, and connecting this metro track to the other one, and then that just leads into the last two stations. The way that that'd have to work is that I would have to replace this building with a new one and use the metro overhaul mod to change the different train tracks around so that there's only one there. I also considered putting like an extra platform on this side and completely reworking this area so that the metro tracks go into a separate platform instead of into the main train station, and then just having all 4 of these tracks, or all 8 technically, for just regular trains, and then maybe converting some of this industrial area into some sort of train yard or something, since we're kind of lacking that for for passenger trains. I nearly said pedestrian trains, which I guess that kind of you would get the idea of what I'm trying to say, but it's not exactly correct. Following on from that, you've got the elevated metro station. I think these are some sort of Japanese style assets that I've used here, but I thought they kind of fit well in the industrial theme of this area. And then continuing along, it kind of goes out here, and I'll show that a bit later. I still have the daylight cycle set on, so I might just turn that off, since it's just gonna be annoying as I continue to record this. But now I think we're going to head over to kind of what I consider the main road area, since it's sort of the main road leading north out of the city. There's just like a few vanilla buildings here that act as apartments or whatever, as well as a few other buildings here. This hotel, that just kind of sits here randomly. I guess it's close enough to the city that it would be a good place to stay and potentially a bit cheaper than staying at, say, the Western Hotel, which is like right in the center of the city here. Yeah, I mean, this gives you a decent view of the skyline anyway, with some incinerators in the back for game functionality. I'll probably find a better way of handling my garbage in the future, but for now, that's there. Yeah, just some sort of industrial place. I feel like this looked a bit more run down, but maybe it's my camera settings at the moment. I don't have that quite right. And then around this you've just got more buildings, some car dealerships and things along this road. You've got a Kia dealership, and I think this is another one here, yeah, Mercedes dealership as well. And I think that was all we had in terms of car dealerships, was just the two. You know, some more sort of lower density buildings along this whole street. Here I did something quite interesting. I mean, it doesn't look perfect now since the whole surface painted thing that I was saying. I mean, we can just add in some like concrete surfaces, or the like concrete brush, I think it's called, just to kind of cover this up and sort of show you what I'm trying to achieve here. If we go for, say, 8x8, too big, so 4x4. Yeah, this is just my solution to not using surface painter, is to use these ultimate area fillers instead. They come in a collection, it's just called like ultimate area fillers. And I mean, they do a good enough job. I mean, in a way they're a bit different to using surface painter, but also you can put them on angles, whereas surface painter kind of snaps to that weird in-game grid, as well as it just tends to disappear if you subscribe to something during the middle of playing a game. So yeah, I got rid of that mod. Just didn't want the hassle of it anymore, to be honest, because it's happened to me too often, and I just decided that, you know, whenever it last happened in the city, I decided it was time to unsubscribe. And then, as I said before, we have an industrial area over here, but we also have another industrial area on this side of the train line. Some old factory, I think I called this a shoe factory on the episode name, because the building's called like Jack's Shoe Factory or Shoe Company or something like that, as you can see on the sign there. And then next to that you've got the main sort of rail cargo yard area in the city. There's a whole lot of containers there. I don't really know how exactly this would function, but those containers go from there to the main container yard here, which I built a few episodes after building that bit. If we zoom in, it should look okay here. I mean, you can see these cranes sit over the top. I think there are some animated ones on the workshop, but I'm not going to change that. And then you've just got a whole lot of rail cars lined up here. I kind of wish I'd done this differently, but I'm just going to leave it and probably end up doing a second rail yard close to the edge of the city. As I imagine that as the city expanded, perhaps it was too expensive to expand this one, or just more strategic to put it in a different place or something, but that's my plans. And then I might take you over to this suburb first. This is just kind of filling in a lot of the space between, you've got the train line here, and then just essentially other parts of the city, as well as this little area that I built in episode 16, which is just kind of the edge of the downtown area beside this big freeway interchange, or motorway interchange as we call it in New Zealand. As you can see, we're driving on the left hand side of the road, since this is a New Zealand style city, and that is the side that we drive on here in New Zealand, so yeah, that works. I actually did a decently good job at getting the curves to look okay. I mean, this one looks a little bit steep, but just the whole height of the tunnels basically means that you can't do much else, because all this space in here could kind of just be nothing, but in the game, you know, the way the models are, means you have to have them way lower, which is not ideal in some situations. For the moment, I've just got the vanilla highway leading out across the river into that tunnel, but in future, at some point, the highway will sort of extend out here, sort of in this direction, curving across and going out that way, as through this valley here. You can't really see it with the edge fog on, but through this valley is probably going to be the main way into the city, in and out of the city, should I say. And yeah, that just goes through a tunnel, and I'll show you that a bit later. But we do have this suburb over here. Some of it I did off camera, including this rugby field with a few parking lots and things around it. This was a very sort of, wasn't really a very interesting build, put it that way. Just putting down a rugby field and things, as well as the other off-camera work I did there included just filling out a whole lot of these houses. And then in the center of the suburb you just have a few shops and things. I probably would change this Burger King asset now. I think there's probably a better one on the workshop. And then, you know, just similar style buildings to what we had in parts of the downtown, but very low rise, sort of brick, older looking buildings mainly, as I imagine that, especially with this suburb, it would have been built quite early, as it's still quite close to the CBD, and perhaps this was like one of the first suburbs that got built as the city expanded. This cemetery, I'm probably going to actually sort of redo this area and just take this road out that's connecting up here, take these houses out, and fill in this whole sort of triangular block with cemetery rather than have it only extend to there. Or perhaps, you know, I could do this bit with houses and just leave that as it is. And then we've got a train running through. I wasn't actually sure whether this would work in this save game because I haven't really messed around much with advanced vehicle options, but yeah, we've got a freight train currently clipping through that road because I specifically didn't want to connect it up for the time being since this area isn't finished. Yeah, I've also got a whole lot of houses that I detailed in the asset editor, which is what I've been using pretty much exclusively in the city, except for really awkward areas where I'll just find some house asset that I'm subscribed to, and use that on like some awkward corner lot where perhaps these rectangular houses wouldn't fit so well. Yeah, later when I was doing the more recent suburbs, I decided to forego a fence on like one side of the building so that they were way more flexible in terms of how you could place them. But anyway, I'll talk about that stuff when we get to that, which probably won't be for a while, judging by how long I've already been recording this episode for. A nice little primary school here. For the sports fields, I just left it open space, as judging by like the trees and things, it's probably summertime in the city, and perhaps schools are out, and all the like sports equipment and paint on the fields has, you know, been removed, or the paint's washed off or been, you know, cut off with a lawnmower essentially. So yeah, you're just left with these empty fields. Also, I don't really know what else to do in here. So yeah, if you look in the city, you've got like one empty field here, you've got the high school, you've got another school, and I think that's it for now, but eventually we'll have more schools in the city as it expands. Another suburb we've got is this little sort of little really awkward chunk of buildings here. I imagine that, or at least I've designed the road network so that it looks like there was a road coming from the right here, crossing the train tracks, a level crossing, and then perhaps crossing this set of train tracks as well, a level crossing, but it's since been removed and replaced with this road, which connects up to that area that's all blocked off from everything else. And then you've got this like underpassy thing going all the way through. Then you've got this metro track, which is eventually going to extend out somewhere. I might put the airport over in this area here if it's still within the 25 tiles. I think it is. But I plan on putting the airport kind of in this stretch of area here, but that probably won't come for a very long time, as I plan on extending the city out a bit more before that. I think we'll just continue on kind of working around clockwise at this stage. So I did build this like Pak'nSave here but since I built that, there has been an asset released on the workshop, which is just a regular Pak'nSave, as I think this one looks quite unusual, so I'm probably going to replace it with this, or I might even try do that right now, because it probably won't take me that long, to be honest, as long as I can get the orientation right. Actually, there's a whole lot of POs here, so it might make it a little bit difficult to do that, but I think it can be done. We just select move it, shut that thingy down for a moment. Yeah, I think that other area around the back's going to have to go too. PO. That's what we want. There's also some signs out the front of this that need changing too. Yeah, we'll just throw this in here. Honestly, I feel like this is feeling way easier than how I usually build stuff, to be honest, because usually it takes quite a while of trial and error to do these things, but I guess I have had this on my mind for quite a while. I mean, the hardest thing is actually just getting the building at the right height so that it doesn't look unusual. I think that'll do the trick. Yeah, but you've also got these signs as opposed to, say, these signs, which I think look a lot better. You've even got the stickman on top. If you're from New Zealand, you'll get all the sort of jokes of this building in terms of having the stickman. There's a whole lot of jokes about that in general online, and they just try and be funny about it. So yeah, we've actually replaced a building in this city tour. I mean, I was kind of planning on it, to be honest. Then you've got like some small sort of public housing complex, just these two-story flats, all going through, all nicely connected up with pedestrian walkways. I think a lot of those don't actually function, they're just aesthetic, but the roads in between them do function so that the buildings actually function and have a population. Here's the sort of next train station along this line. Just a nice elevated one sitting in the middle of the suburb, and when I do make a bus network in the city, that'll probably be like one of the hubs, or pretty much every train station will be sort of like a bus exchange, because I think that's sort of an efficient way to do public transport. You've got a high school down here, currently the only one in the city. And yeah, I just used two high school buildings here, so if you look at the capacity, there's 1,000 in that one and 1,300 in that one. So in total, that high school in-game would have a population of capacity of 2,300, which is probably quite high, but it sort of means that I don't have to do high schools so often. Plenty of tennis courts, basketball courts, parking, which seems to be quite full. I'm not sure if that's for the high school itself, or if that's just because there's other stuff around in this area. And then sort of just an empty field again, as I was saying before about not putting sports fields in here because it's summertime. I did with that rugby field though that you saw earlier, I guess just to sort of include it. Lots of suburbs, there's pretty much just the same building in a way, like the same 10 or so buildings made slightly differently. So these are the sort of houses where I sort of had to pick, like, say, this little allotment house from the European Suburbia pack and just fill it up, because it's not quite ideal. And if I was doing this area again, I probably wouldn't even use these network fences. I'd just use the sort of prop fences that are included on the houses on this side. Pretty much just because, for whatever reason, I think they look better. I think it's mainly the thickness of those networks that I don't personally like that much. Then this is the other side of that tunnel where that interchange was. That just comes out, and you've got sort of the northbound way can exit, and you can enter heading southbound into the city. And then, yeah, it just comes out here. I don't know whether I showed this in an episode or not, but I did sort of tweak around with this bit a bit more and put a separate lane off here and just give way and everything. I don't think there's actually any in-game traffic priorities on this one, but it's supposed to be give way. Actually, speaking of traffic, I think I did make most of the downtown into like a one-way system. So yeah, I mean, basically my theory with this whole city was that a lot of it was built sort of before cars, and sort of working with what they had, they ended up creating a really complex one-way system. So basically we've got this road, which is kind of the main road, and that is two-way. So is this one that goes north, that's two-way leading out of the city, but most of these roads are one-way, so that one's going in that direction, and the next one I think goes in the other direction, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how it works. Oh no, this one might be two-way, but some of them are one-way, and it gets really confusing. Or maybe it's just in this direction it's one way. I can't really remember what I did here, but anyway, some of them are one way, and I'm just rambling now. Another primary school, the second one, we only have 2 in the city at the moment. And then in this area, just trying to add some little small parks and things, as well as like some slightly higher density stuff in this area. Maybe go on the other side because the shadows don't look that great on that side. Yeah, a lot of houses in this area are the same too. Since this was the very first suburb that I did, I hadn't done many asset editor houses. I have to say these do have like quite an Australian vibe, I guess, just the weatherboard style of them, and also they're not sitting on the ground quite perfectly, but I mean my suburbs, I want them to look really great from a distance and in certain spots, and in some points I don't really mind if they're slightly floating in the terrain or something. Some high density stuff down here, and then this is sort of, I think this was the first suburb that I built, yeah, as I was saying before. But I did come in here and add this roundabout and change this like 2 or 3 times. Did this bridge as well, which is sort of steep, but it needs to get over this railway line without impacting it, and you can see that I've left these roads in here just to kind of show you where the road went before it was changed into a bridge. And then also in this suburb here you've got a Coles, which is an Australian supermarket, and at the time was like the closest thing I could get to New Zealand supermarkets. Now we've got LA Tigers making the Pak'nSave though, so that's really great to add into the city, but at that time I added this Coles here. We also had a super cheap auto on the workshop, which I think they're in both Australia and New Zealand. They're sort of like a car parts place. Yeah, I really do like sort of these ground views. Again, you've got the missing surface painter stuff that I haven't changed yet. But yeah, just a big parking lot for both the Coles supermarket and the super cheap, and just the surrounding area really. If we keep heading up this way, there's this park that I did off camera. I kind of wish I had recorded this, but for whatever reason, when I was just doing stuff off camera, I made this park. There's also a few ponds in here with just a touch of water on a really shallow sort of dugout bit just to make these ponds. Lots of trees around, this gazebo, some cafes just from the Park Life DLC, restrooms, and then this big empty area that I imagine could be for, say, sports events, or maybe when the circus comes to town, or something like that anyway. And then you've got this roundabout here, which kind of all connects up to the big interchange, which is down, just kind of down where this highway is underneath. That kind of goes off to the left and connects up to the interchange. But I ended up making a whole lot of like custom signs here, so you can see like this road goes to Fielding and Palmerston North, which are real places in New Zealand. This other road here goes to Whanganui, which is a city in New Zealand as well as intended to head out to the city's airport. Taupō is a real place as well. Roughly where this geography is, it lines up to the real life Hunterville. State Highway 54 sort of comes just north of a really small town in New Zealand called Hunterville, and Whanganui, there's like some back road that leads there, but I imagine that, you know, if this was a real life place, they'd be more connected. And then Taupo is on State Highway 1, but State Highway 1 is the motorway in the city, and hence everything going on here. Anyway, it's just kind of fictional anyway, so probably doesn't need that much of an explanation. And then just a gas station on the corner, as you tend to have, as well as I did some more signs down here. Very different one to that one you just saw before. This actually took a little bit longer to sort of put together since it was a little bit more complex. And then, I mean, most of the rest of this area is just all houses. Yeah, just really just houses. I mean, there's like a different building style here, really close to the freeway, where I started using a different set of houses. I imagine these were built quite late compared to the rest of them. I mean, it's hard to do that transition though between different styles of buildings though. Like, you've got some of these are in the first or second sort of wave of houses that I did. And then this is the most recent one here. I feel like since we're here, we should talk about this massive interchange that I built. This probably, including like the detailing and basically rebuilding this thing for a second time, because I didn't like it the first time. It probably took me like 20 or more hours to build, but I think it looks really nice. I deliberately missed the connection coming from this direction to this direction though, as I feel like, given the angle of the way that they kind of come into each other, there's probably some other road, or probably not highway in this case, that connects them, but just some other like local road thing that might be marked as a highway but isn't sort of like your motorway freeway with the interchanges and everything that connects up those two directions, as I imagine there probably isn't as much demand for it. But I imagine that, you know, leading out of the city, originally you could go either to the right here around this curve, or you could go up the hill over these other ramps, and that leads out of the city. And then this was less of a connection and was added in later. Hence why it really looks like it's cutting through suburbs, is because it probably was when it was built. Like, you've got the trees and awkward little patches of where houses have been bulldozed and things and just filled with trees instead. And then another rugby field area, and some weird little, I imagine this is like some sort of motel or something, but I was just using the Green Cities DLC buildings in here, and it just kind of fills up the area really nicely. You get sort of this nice look of houses overlooking this rugby field, as well as all the houses on the hill that I just built recently in episode 20 of the series. You know, plenty more houses and things. I mean, this series is predominantly just suburbs, as most City Skylines series tend to be, to kind of get that balance. And then just like a few shops down here. You've got the Still Shop, which is sort of, you know, it's a chain of sort of hire, and, you know, they sell like chainsaws and things and barbecues in New Zealand, as well as Woolworths, the Australian supermarket chain. And yeah, just more houses, a gas station, and then kind of that's going to be the center of one suburb, and then another suburb is over here centered around this roundabout. I did add in the little like arrow things so that people know which direction to go around the roundabout in, but there's, you know, another one of these Still Shop buildings, as well as a Repco on the back of this parking lot. And yeah, just some other shops up here made by Alataga's in his New Zealand collection, and then just University City building here just to kind of fill up the end of that space. So I'm just adding this in after recording the video, but I just wanted to point out the different suburbs in the city. So Hunterville down in sort of the bottom right is where the downtown is, and I just named it Hunterville as it's sort of the center of the city, given the city's named Hunterville and everything else. Westdale, that was originally called Westside, but I felt like Westdale just kind of fit a bit better. I think I think there is another series on YouTube called like Westdale or something like that too, and that's just that suburb with the school and a couple of shops. Mind you, that is most of the suburbs in the city. Phillipstown, I kind of imagine that perhaps that is a bit of a lower income neighbourhood, given that parts of it are by industrial areas and kind of sandwiched in between different highways and train lines and everything else. Perhaps that's not the best part of town. New Surrey is just kind of the other half of that industrial area, and some houses on the other side of the main road. I imagine that will be expanded in the future in terms of what is included in that suburb anyway. Collingwood is kind of the first suburb that I did, that's sort of bordered by the train line and then the highway and then just some arbitrary sort of division on this side. Northwood, sort of kind of not quite divided by the highway, but the highway does run through it a little bit. There's a few houses on the other side of that highway though. And then that's just going to stretch up into somewhere in the hills. I imagine that the border of this will just be where sort of the roads don't connect up or something. Burwood is the main part of the hills. You've got this area at the bottom of the hills, and then it sort of extends up into the hills, and then Sutton Hill is a little area that I don't even know whether I'll build up here anymore, but if I do, that'll be called Sutton Hill, the area. And if not, that'll probably be expanded into Burwood, and the rest will just be farmland or forest or something up here. And yeah, that's pretty much a rundown of the suburbs in brief, and then back to the regular part of the video. I think this almost covers most things except for maybe the houses on the hill. A very generic looking supermarket that took way too long to build. And then the final part of the last episode was building these houses on the hill. I think they look really good when the LODs are up really high and you can see all this grass. I mean, up there there's this grass as well, but you can't see it as well because the LODs have been turned down so that this isn't sort of like really excessively laggy. But I think this area in general is probably one of my best builds ever. I mean, given that it is recent, it kind of makes sense that, I've improved over time and got better and just really pushed myself in general to sort of try something new in every episode in terms of my building techniques and things. And I also used a whole lot of grey flame rocks up here, just to kind of make the cliffs look better. I mean, in some places I do have the exposed cliff texture, but in some places I went for the grey flame rocks instead. Yeah, I mean, you get a really nice view of the whole skyline from up in this part of the city. And then there's just a few apartment buildings. I guess they're there to kind of capitalize on that view there. But I think that sort of covers most of the city. Hopefully I haven't missed too many things out. But yeah, in the future, as I was saying earlier, we're going to have an airport over here. We're probably going to have a separate town down here that's kind of grown in its own way and is either going to be, slightly disconnected from the suburbs on the other side of the river, or they've just eventually grown into one continuous city. But I imagine that by doing this town first, I would sort of get its own road layouts and then build the main city's own road layouts, and you'll kind of get this weird sort of junction of the town and the main city all coming together. That's, my vision for it. It probably won't turn out that way, and I'll forget that I even want to do that when I come back to this place in some time. I don't know whether this will be the next area I work on in the city or if I'll just continue expanding it out. There's also plans for another town somewhere in this area. I haven't exactly decided where yet, because that's quite a big area to cover, and you know, given that this is going to be the largest city, it's probably going to be smaller than this, so we'll fit into that area quite nicely. And then, I mean, my other plans for the city, I don't really have many right now. I also forgot to mention that you've got a really nice hill over here that I built in the map editor a long time ago. Probably shouldn't turn away from that. Yeah, so I mean, that just makes it a good backdrop. Sort of, in certain angles of the city you can see that, and in certain angles you'd see all the houses on the hill as well as all this stuff. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be finished around the edge of the city, but I mean, I imagine that the city itself is maybe only like a quarter done at this stage, or even less than that, which is kind of daunting because I don't want to spend forever on the city. I also plan on having, you know, the train line go out this way, somehow go through these hills. They're actually kind of like quite steep and hilly, if you measure them, but somehow the train line's going to go through there, probably through a tunnel of some sort, or snaking up over some hill or something. We've already got the connection leading out this direction, as well as various metro tracks. One will come down here. I might just put a diagram up that I drew a few weeks ago of the metro plans for the city, but I think there's been enough of me rambling about my own little creation here for however long it's been. But soon we're going to do a cinematic video from the city, just showcasing a whole lot of things that I really enjoy. That's probably only going to be about 3 minutes long or something, because I've already picked out the music for that, and that's 3 minutes long, so I mean, there's still plenty of time though. And then after that, I'm probably going to take a break for an unspecified amount of time. I'll probably release kind of a separate video, sort of updating people on what is going on in the channel, because I'm currently in the process of starting a new series. I mean, I did start it in like September, but haven't got very far with that and what I want to do. So that will take a while to prepare before it's ready to release videos from. If you've enjoyed this one and are still watching because you're actually engaged in this video of some random dude on the internet flying around his in-game city for like 40 minutes or whatever, then leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, then go check out my other videos, especially that last episode 20 video that I did. I thought that was quite good, as well as the few interchange building videos before that. I would highly recommend those. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.